Have you ever wanted to put a bigger pen in our journals or our leather covers, but you just couldn't quite get it to fit? And you thought to yourself, man, if only they made this a little bit larger. Why'd they make them so small? Well, this episode is for you. And welcome back to the Murdy Creative Co podcast. I'm your host, Colin Murdy, and today's topic is bigger pen loops. But first, I want to say thank you to everyone who's supported the company so far. If you got a chance, go check us out on the web at murdycreative.co. That's M-U-R-D-Y creative.co, or you can check us out on all of our social medias. Thank you to everyone who has joined our membership program. It's been a fun, new, exciting thing, and all of you who've left feedback. I really appreciate that and helped us out in that program. If you haven't heard already, we have new pocket cuts and new stationary cuts that have pen loops, which obviously fits right within today's story. But the thing that really kicks off this is a litany of individuals over the course of the last 7 years, who have asked for larger pen loops. And it's a reasonable question. It's a reasonable request. And why we haven't done it has some specific answers. To go back in history to properly understand why the pen loops are the size they are, you have to understand that when I was starting out making journals, a big part of the choice that we made with the Parker Jotter was aesthetic. It was traditional, historic. Obviously, like I'd mentioned in previous podcasts, the Parker Jotter was originally made in my hometown, so it's a nice little homage to that. I think the Parker Jotter is a beautiful pen, and it's a slim, thin pen that fits that kind of lightweight, beautiful aesthetic that I like. It is a little on the thinner side. Now, if you look at the thickness of our leather, one of the challenges when I was making the classic cut was to say, how do we balance the pen size and the pen loops to fit with the insert inside it so that when the journal is on the table, it lays flat and doesn't bulge. And that's part of where the Parker Jotter made sense, because in a journal that has an insert of a specified thickness, if the pen is significantly larger, it causes the journal to kind of bow up where the pen loops are. Now, as time went on, we did make one modification. The earliest pen covers, the Jotter was very tight to fit inside it. And that was done so that things didn't slip out or fall away and any of that stuff. We did make one modification when we revised the number 2s 5 years ago, something like that. And we made it just a little bit larger. And that was explicitly to solve the problem where people wanted to put the Pilot G2 pens inside them. Now, say what you will about the Pilot G2 pens, good or bad, they are very popular. So for me, making that change, it was a relatively minor change. The diameter is not significantly different in reality, at least not at the widest parts. And it was a relatively minor change, so we made that change. And people, for the most part, were happy with it. And one of the things that has come back over and over about the pen loops, I think, is the fact that they really are a bit of a moldable thing. And that's going to be mainly the point that I'm going to be making during this episode, and I'll demonstrate it with this one that I have in front of me right now. But if you put a pen of a specific size in the pen loops, it may be tight at first, but eventually the leather will relax a little bit and stretch to accommodate that. And so for those who wanted to put the G2 in but thought it was a little tight, we recommended just leave it, give it a couple of days, it'll relax out. This is true for all leather products, by the way. For the most part, leather is a very unique material. It is one of the only materials that is intelligently constructed at a near atomic level, at a cellular level, right? Every other product you've ever dealt with, well, other than wood's a good example of a similar thing, but any product that you've made that's man-made has fundamentally a certain homogeneity to it. There has to be a baseline just uniformity to the design, because we can't, for the most part, construct things at a very, very, very small level from a materials perspective. The advantage of leather is it was built, it was living at one point, and so all of those cells independently and intelligently organized themselves to become a material that is breathable, stretchable, durable, and fundamentally unique. So to that point, leather will mold. It will mold to its shape. Now, obviously, different types of leather, different tanning processes create leathers that are better or worse at molding. And obviously, when you want to mold leather to a certain shape, it's important to keep in mind that particular tannage, right? Veg tan leather, which has very limited tanning to it, can be wet molded very easily, super easily. That water gets into the leather, causes the leather to swell, and then if you put something around it, it will shrink back to that shape, and it will remember that shape. That good quality also is a double-edged sword, because it means that if that leather ever gets wet, it loses that memory, or it can be molded in other ways. And so for our leather, we don't use veg tan leather because it's also pretty much biodegradable in that if you leave it outside after 30 days, veg tan leather will be completely gone. It degrades very rapidly. If you oil it, obviously that doesn't happen. If you maintain it, that doesn't happen. But for ours, we wanted a leather that was going to be waterproof, humidity resistant, very, very temperature stable, and also was going to be very low maintenance. And that's where we went with chrome tanning, which is a much more stable process and leaves a more stable product. However, it means that the leather has modest, but does have modest stretching purposes. So one of the things that we've played around with in the past, and we experimented with this months ago, and we had good results, and it was one of those things where I'm like, we should launch this, but we just never really got around to it. But we had a lot of people, especially as we've been launching new things with pen loops, bring it up again, which is that they want larger pen loops. Now, I could just make larger pen loops. We could just make larger pen loops. But the problem is this: we can't have infinite number of product variations on our website. There's a limited number of dyes that we can buy. There's a limited number of ways that we can demonstrate the product on our website. And the paradox of choice problem becomes particularly pernicious in this case, where the more options you have, the more difficult it is for many people to make the decision to buy. So for us to say, okay, we've got all these different color options and options for inserts and engraving options, those are what I'll describe as kind of the most core, those are the decisions that the most number of people will be affected by. However, most people, I imagine, will use the product out of the box as it comes, which is with a pen and with the Parker Jotter. And it's a very specific group of people that have unique pen demands. Now, I think there's also a reasonable case to be made that the people that are interested in leather journals like ours happen to also have a Venn diagram relationship with those that are pen lovers that is kind of a circle. So that overlaps pretty high. So there's something to be said about that. However, when we talk about saying we want to make a product that has an appeal that can go beyond a very, very niche specific audience, having the ability to select your pen loop diameter is a little bit too much, I think, for many people, because I think most people look at that option and most people will look at that drop down and they will say, I have no idea what is right. And so that will become a blocker from them. However, we want to help people that want to have larger pens. So this technique was something we pioneered years ago, by the way, but we've been experimenting with it more thoroughly last things. And you can see there's an Allen key in this pen hole, in this pen loop. And this Allen key is a 14 millimeter Allen key. Now, Allen keys, I believe, are measured from the flats, which means that these little ridges mean that it's actually a little bit larger than 14 in a diameter perspective. The pen loops that come with the regular, it was just standard pen loops that we have, these pen loops originally, are about 10 millimeters in their diameter. And I'm using millimeters only because it's a little bit easier for people to understand. A lot of pens are measured in millimeters. So when we talk about barrel diameter, right, 10 millimeters is what the Jotter is. The pen loops really start out at about 10. Actually, the Jotter is a little bit smaller than that, but the pen loops start at about 10. And for our future pen and for the Pilot G2, that translates to about 3/8 of an inch in diameter if you're using English units. However, 10 millimeters is not where these loops are limited. So you can take and start with 10, and then the process is pretty straightforward. And you can get most of these parts of the hardware store if you want, if you go to most hardware stores. And if they don't have metric pen or Allen keys, or they don't have Allen keys this large, I know for sure they're on Amazon, and you may be able to find English versions that are similar in their size. But what you do is this: you start with a 10 millimeter Allen key, and then you move up to a 12, and then you move up to a 14. Now, you can use the intermediary steps if you'd like, but what you do is you very carefully, making sure that the tabs, the fingers that hold the loops in place, stay down, slowly but carefully insert the Allen key through the pen loops. They will begin to stretch as you insert it. That's good, right? You want it to be in place, and you want it to be fully seated where the whole Allen key is all the way down the loops. Starting with 10 to make sure that that's obvious, that should fit in very easily. A 10 should fit in nicely with no problems. Moving up to the 12, you should also not have any problems. And then you should move up to the 14 or wherever you want to go. Now, in our experiments, 14 is about the max. You maybe could get away with 15. And I actually think more realistically, a 14 millimeter Allen key is about 15 millimeters in circular diameter because of the way that the points are. So to that end, you could have probably a 15 millimeter pen in a 14 millimeter Allen key stretched pen loops. Now, here's an important point. This will be our future pen. This is about the same diameter as a Pilot G2 in hand. This is what 14 millimeters looks like. 14 millimeters is large. It's a large pen. Now, all of you pen people out there are going to acknowledge, and I am going to acknowledge this point, it's not 14 millimeters throughout the entire diameter of the pen. That I'm aware of. It's normally the cap that's got 14 millimeters in diameter, and that's normally the issue. I'm aware of that. But just as a point, 14 millimeters is pretty large, right? It's pretty substantial, right? So when we're looking and comparing at these two sizes, it's not necessarily very close. To that end, if you try, just for fun, to put a pen that is a jotter or something like this inside a 14 millimeter loop, it looks absolutely ridiculous. There is so much additional room. You can move the pen back and forth with quite a bit of slack. And I don't think that's good for the average person. So the idea that would be the counterpoint, which is, well, we'll just make our pen loops larger for everyone. We'll just make them 14 millimeters by default, and that way everything smaller can fit in it. That doesn't work either because it creates a very sloppy and slack experience for everybody but fancy, expensive pen users. Now, we want to empower people, obviously, to do this themselves at home. However, we also know that some people don't really want to do that, and we're happy to help. We are offering a service where you purchase the service, we'll send you a return label, you put it in a box, you return it to us. We will do the pen loop stretching here over the course of several days because it takes several days. Like you put the 10 millimeter in, leave it for at least 24 hours, then put the 12 millimeter in, leave it for at least 24 hours, then put the 14 in and leave it for at least 24 hours. Like it takes time to stretch, obviously. But once it's stretched, by the way, we found that it doesn't really shrink back. So if you send it to us, we will do that stretching over the course of the time that it takes to get to the correct diameter. And then we will send it back to you. And you can have it with the stretched versions, right? Like I said, if you want to do it at home, we strongly encourage that. We are happy to help. We're happy to walk you through it. We're happy to talk with you via email or phone or text message about how you can do that. We are here to help. However, we're also happy to offer it as a service for those who are interested in having us do it. But the moral of the story is the pen loops can become the size you want them to be for the most part. Now, if you're talking about pens that go beyond 14 or 15 millimeters, like I said, I think the 14 millimeter Allen keys actually make it a little bit larger than 14 because it's got those points. I'd be willing to bet, I don't have good confirmation on this, but I'd be willing to bet a 15 millimeter pen might be able to fit in these, or a 15 millimeter might be able to get close enough that it could stretch just a tiny bit further. Like I said, I wouldn't stretch it beyond 14, or in this case, the 14 millimeter Allen keys, only because eventually the leather reaches its limitation on how far it can stretch, and that's obviously something to keep in mind. But all that to be said, this can apply to virtually all of our pen loops because all of our pen loops are the same design, construction, and size, which allows for people to have a broader control over what their exact pen loop situation will be. As a counterpoint, or as a further point, I should say, you don't have to do it with Allen keys. If you're someone who collects pens and you've got a variety of pens and you've got a pen that just barely fits, you can put that in there for 24 hours and it should fit better. And then you take that one out and you maybe find a different pen that's a little bit larger and you can do that as well. You can do this with the pens themselves. Normally, in most cases, I would overstretch it just a tiny bit if you can manage it, right? If you're going to a 13 millimeter diameter or a 12 millimeter diameter, The 14 probably will be okay as far as it won't look too silly. You could probably just stick with the 12 or 13, and it will adapt to the size of the pen you have it in. You may need to take a flathead screwdriver, just as a point. As you get all these things inserted, you may need to take a flathead screwdriver and lightly just press on the edge where the tab enters the loop itself, just because it's going to want to pull out just a little bit there, but you can tuck that back in, and then that'll stretch properly, and it won't do that anymore. So all this to be said, the pen loops can become quite a bit larger than they were originally. To be able to go from 10 millimeters to 14 millimeters should cover the vast majority of pens, including fancy pens. And to go beyond that is something that at the moment we don't have plans for, but I'm not going to say we never will have the opportunity to do it. As part of the effects that we are working on with the bag line, we may be able to do one-off productions more simply. I'm not making that as a promise. We have quite a ways to go in that particular technology before we are able to do that with any sort of consistent, reliable, predictable, and sellable results. But one of the things that we are working on as the extension of our bag line is the ability to make one-off designs in a much more doable and accurate way. If we are able to pull that off, we may be able to then offer, for those who want to have pen loops that are able to fit something larger than 14 or 15 millimeters, and they want to go up even further, we may be able to offer at that point customization that would be larger pen loops of the same design to accommodate those larger sizes. But in the meantime, the stretching works really well, and I would strongly recommend doing that. This is true of all of our products. This is true of all of our leather across the board, and all of leather just in general. If you have an insert that's just a little bit too big, or you have a pen is a good example, or a stack of papers that's just a little bit too big, you just want it to go a little further, the leather can adapt to that specific shape. I would use weight. If you're trying to stretch it, you need to obviously use outward pressure in the form of the Allen keys. But if you're trying to fit an insert in it, I would kind of stretch the loops over the top of it, and I would put weight, like heavy books and something on the top of it. That will help kind of conform the leather to the shape of the insert even better. So that can be done across the board. We want to help you guys, and we appreciate the feedback. I hope that when you guys hear me talk about things like this, you can appreciate the position I'm in, where making a set of products that appeals to an extremely specific and small group of people that may come at the expense of simplicity and ease of use of the website is a difficult decision, but is probably going to be one I have to make judiciously. And for those of you who have large, fancy pens, I'm hoping this solution works for you. I'm hoping this is something that you are excited to try. I'm hoping this is something that provides you with the solution you've been after and with the journal you've had all along, right? The secret was right there in front of you this entire time. And I'm glad that we're able to help for those of you who want to send it back and have us do it. But like I said, I wanted to come up with a solution when we came up with this problem, that is something that you could do in your own homes without having to send it back to us and being without your journal for a few days. If you have questions, comments, concerns, funny thoughts about this particular operation, particular way of doing this, I would love to hear more. If you personally have done something similar or some other type of stretching to your journal, I would love to hear how it went. I would love to know whether it was successful, what you used, how long you used from timing perspective. And I'd love to know more, because obviously people ask us questions all the time, and being able to have experiential success from other people to advise them with is always good. So mention that in the comments below. Send us an email directly. Thank you guys for tuning in. Be sure to check back in next week, Wednesday, for the next topic. And don't forget to check that subscribe button as well as the notification bell to get notified when we put out new episodes. During the summer, it's not been as reliable just because there's not always anything to talk about. And sometimes we're working on other things in the background. So I've not been as good about being on it every week. So definitely hit the notification bell so you don't miss it if we just skip a week or we miss that. So definitely do that. If you have any questions, concerns, comments, or other things about the company, the product, just my hair, whatever you want to talk about, you can send us a message directly on the contact form on the main page of our website. At the very bottom of the website page, there's a contact form where you can fill out your name, your email, all that stuff, and write your message. That goes directly to our inbox. If, however, you'd like to bypass that and send an email directly to us, using regular email, you can send an email to sales@murdycreative.co, SALES at murdycreative.co. You can reach out to us via social media, like DM us. I will admit that because they are not properly integrated into our inbox, despite our best efforts, we have not had reliable results in getting that integration to work. Sometimes it just stops working and doesn't tell us it's not working. So that's not the most efficient way to get a hold of us. To be completely honest, calling or texting us is the easiest. 414-434-9001. That's 414-434-9001. We're available Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Central Time. If for whatever reason you don't get a hold of us, please leave us a voicemail. If you text us, give us a few minutes before you text us again, because we will text back. It's Anna. Anna's the person that reads the emails. Anna's the person that answers the phone. Anna's the person that responds to the text message. And Anna, at this very moment, while I'm in here podcasting, is on the other side of the door operating our press to punch out leather goods. So Anna does a lot of stuff around here. And so sometimes she's away from the phone and whatnot, helping out making product. So please be aware and patient when you reach out to us. We definitely are not ignoring you. We want to get back to you. If you have not heard from us within 24 hours, certainly feel free to follow up. We almost always respond within 24 hours. Not on weekends. We don't respond on weekends. Anna goes to sleep and has her days off on Saturday and Sunday like everybody else. But for the most part, if you're messaging us on Monday and you haven't heard back by Tuesday, follow up on Tuesday. We will reach out to you. What else do I have? Custom orders. If you want to get custom engraved items, we have no minimum order quantities and no setup fees. It's a simple flat fee, normally about $15, and you can do that by clicking on the blue Add Custom Logo Engraving button on most of the product pages on our website. If you don't see that blue button, it's just because it's not in the customizer. You can still send Anna an email and ask for a custom engraved item. She will make you a custom mock-up as well as an order link that you can check out with that custom item. It is doable. If you want to get bulk items, you can just simply add as many do you want as your cart, and the bulk discount applies at 5 items, and you can mix and match to your heart's desire. So you can get 5 of one item or 1 of 5 items, and the bulk discount applies regardless. If you want to get a custom engraved item with your logo, there's no problem. You have the copyright. However, if you're trying to get something that's copyright protected, Game of Thrones, anything owned by the Disney Corporation, Star Wars, anything owned by any of them, they will sue us. They're not going to sue you. They're going to sue me. So definitely don't use copyright protected images unless you have permission, and you can obviously go and look online for copyright free public domain for commercial use images if you want to find images that are just generic images that you can use. Pixabay is a great resource for that, Pixabay. We're not getting paid or sponsored by them. I just use them a lot personally, and they're good for that purpose. So check them out if you're interested in that. If you're going to leave us a review, go leave us a good review at murdycreative.co/review. That'll take you right now to Google where you can leave a review. If you want to read our reviews, you can go to murdycreative.co/reviews with an S. It's where we aggregate all of our different reviews into one place. If for whatever reason you'd leave us a bad review, please give me an opportunity to make it right. It is deeply important to me personally that everyone has a good experience with the company and with the product. If you're unhappy with the product for any reason, if you're unhappy with the service for any reason, send us a message. I am here to help. I want to make things right. We'll give you your money back. We have free domestic returns. Not a lot of people know about this. We should talk about this more. If you do not like your product, send it back to us. We will pay. We will send you a label. You can send it back to us. We will return your money. I don't want you to be unhappy. I want this purchase to be something that you love and cherish for decades to come. And if it's anything short of that, we're happy to make it right. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Have a great day, and goodbye.